Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments and subscribe to our latest stories. Before I start, tell me where you are watching me from. I wonder which cities and towns will join me in this memory that will follow me for years. He asked me to sign. I shouldn't have. It started on a cloudy Wednesday morning, the kind that makes you want to stay in bed just a little longer. The air outside was heavy with the smell of rain, and the light coming through my curtains felt more like dusk than morning. I was standing by the kitchen counter, waiting for the coffee to finish brewing, when the phone rang. His name lit up on the screen, Daniel. My old colleague, or rather, my old friend. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe even a year. I almost didn't answer. There was something about unexpected calls from the past that always made me nervous. But I picked up anyway. His voice hadn't changed, warm, careful, a bit uncertain. He told me he was back in town and wanted to see me. Said he needed a small favor. It's just paperwork, he added, laughing softly. You'll probably think it's nothing. By noon, I found myself driving toward his new office on the west side of town, a place I hadn't been in years. The roads were still wet, the windshield wipers squeaking with every pass. My heart beat a little faster than I expected it to. I told myself it was just nerves, but deep down, I knew it was something else. Something that had been left unsaid between us for a long time. When I arrived, he was already outside, waiting. Daniel had always carried this quiet composure, that kind of calm you can't fake. His hair had more gray in it now, but it suited him. He smiled when he saw me, a smile that felt familiar, yet somehow different. You look just the same, he said. I laughed, shaking my head. You always were a terrible liar. We walked inside together. The office was small but bright, with tall windows that opened to a courtyard filled with wet leaves. A coffee mug sat on his desk, half empty, and a few papers were spread out neatly beside it. He gestured for me to sit down, and I noticed the faint smell of cedar in the room, the same cologne he used to wear years ago. So I said, trying to sound casual, "What's this about?" He paused for a moment, his eyes resting on me longer than they should have. "It's a simple release form," he said, finally. "I'm working on a project that involves some of the work we did together years ago. I just need your signature to include your part. You were a big part of that time, and I didn't want to move forward without asking." I should have felt honored. I should have smiled, said something polite, maybe even proud. But something in his tone made me uneasy. The way he avoided eye contact when he mentioned the project. The way his fingers tapped lightly against the pen he was holding. "Can I read it first?" I asked. "Of course," he said quickly. "Take all the time you need." The paper was short, too short. Just a few paragraphs about consent, rights, and use of material. My name, the date, a space for my signature. I tried to read between the lines, but there wasn't much to see. Still, something about it felt off. I looked up at him. "This isn't just an article or something, is it?" He hesitated. Just for a second. "But I caught it. It's part of a documentary," he said finally. "About our old team. About what happened back then. I didn't want to surprise you, but your part matters." My chest tightened a little. That chapter of my life, the company we built, the long nights, the mistakes, it wasn't something I'd revisited in years. It had ended badly. Too many broken promises, too many misunderstandings. And Daniel, he had been right in the middle of it. "Why me?" I asked softly. "Because you were the only one who stayed honest," he said. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. For a long moment, we just sat there. The rain began tapping on the window again, steady and soft. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think this was just his way of making peace with the past. He reached across the desk, placing the pen in front of me. "You don't have to, if you don't want to," he said. His words sounded kind, almost careful, but they carried something heavier beneath them. A quiet plea. A need for redemption, maybe. I looked at the paper again. My name. The empty line. My mind went back to the years we worked side by side, the nights we stayed late, the quiet moments when we almost said things we shouldn't have. There had always been trust between us, fragile, but real. I signed. The moment the pen left the paper, I felt something shift. Daniel smiled faintly, but his eyes, they didn't. He thanked me, told me I'd done something good. But there was a heaviness in the air now, one that neither of us dared to name. I stood up, brushing invisible dust off my coat. You'll send me a copy of whatever this is, right? I asked, half joking of course, he said. You'll see it before anyone else. I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to. As I walked out into the grey afternoon, I caught my reflection in the glass door, a woman holding onto the pieces of something she didn't quite understand yet. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt wet and uncertain. Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about the way his voice had changed when he said my name. Or the way he looked at the signature like it meant more than ink on paper. I told myself it was nothing. Just a small favor for an old friend, but deep down, I knew that line I signed wasn't just legal. It was emotional. Something had reopened, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face it. That night, as I poured myself a glass of wine, I found myself replaying his words in my mind. You were the only one who stayed honest. I didn't know what he meant by that. Not yet, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. He asked me to sign. I shouldn't have. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, calm, kind, but carrying something hidden. It wasn't guilt, exactly, more like anticipation. I told myself I was overthinking. After all, it was just a form, just a project, just Daniel. But the quiet voice inside me whispered otherwise. By morning, curiosity had already started eating at me. I sat with my coffee, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There we were, a team of 6, smiling, standing in front of that half-finished office space we were once so proud of. Daniel stood right next to me in the picture, his arm resting on the back of my chair, not touching, but close enough to feel familiar. That picture used to make me happy. Now, it made me uneasy. Around noon, an email arrived. From Daniel. No message, just a link and the words, "Thought you'd want to see it first." My heart skipped. I clicked. The video opened with the old company logo, flickering like a memory half buried in time. The narration was Daniel's voice, older but steady. He spoke about beginnings, ambition, loss, all those words that sound noble until you remember the people behind them. Then the camera cut to clips of the team, and there I was. Laughing. Talking. Signing papers. Walking down that same corridor I'd dreamed about just last night. It felt like watching someone else's life. Someone who had believed too much. Then it changed. The tone shifted, the music darker, slower. Daniel began talking about the turning point, about how one person had taken responsibility when others walked away. My chest tightened. I knew what he meant. He was talking about me, but not the way I expected. The video showed documents, reports, emails, my name highlighted, my signature visible. The narration said things like she knew what was coming, and she made choices that others couldn't. The implication was clear. I hadn't been honest. I hadn't been innocent. I froze for a moment. I couldn't even breathe. My own voice echoed faintly from the recording, an interview clip from years ago that I barely remembered giving. The words were taken out of context, rearranged, reshaped until they told a story I didn't recognize. I slammed my laptop shut. My hands were shaking. I called him immediately. He answered on the second ring. "Daniel, what is this?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. He didn't answer right away. I could hear him exhale slowly. "You watched it?" "Yes, I watched it. And I want to know why you made it look like I was part of something I wasn't." "I didn't say that," he said quietly. "You signed the release. I used the footage you approved." "Approved?" I almost laughed. "You told me it was about the team. You didn't tell me you were rewriting history." There was silence on the other end, long enough to make me realize he wasn't going to apologize. "It's not rewriting," he said finally. "It's perspective." Perspective. The word hit harder than it should have. "I trusted you," I whispered. "I know," he said. And there was something in his voice then, something that sounded almost regretful. "But people need to see the truth, even if it hurts." "The truth?" I said, my throat tightening. "Or your version of it." He didn't answer. I ended the call. That afternoon, the sky turned the same dull grey it had been the day before, as if the world hadn't moved forward at all. I sat by the window for hours, watching the light fade, trying to make sense of what had happened. It wasn't just betrayal. It was exposure. He had taken something private, my memories, my mistakes, and twisted them into a story that suited him. And I had given him permission. I thought about calling a lawyer, or even one of the old team members, but I couldn't bring myself to. I didn't want anyone else to see that video. Not yet. Instead, I opened my old laptop, the one I hadn't touched in years. It still had files from those days, notes, meeting records, drafts of projects. I started scrolling, searching for something, though I didn't know what. Maybe proof. Maybe understanding. Then I found it, a folder labeled Final Proposal. Inside were documents Daniel had written, plans he'd hidden from the rest of the team back then. I remembered the tension, the late-night arguments, the way he'd convinced everyone to trust his decisions. And now, all these years later, it was happening again, only this time, he didn't need anyone's permission. He had mine. That night, I didn't pour wine. I poured truth. I read every document, every email, every forgotten message. The more I read, the clearer it became that Daniel's documentary wasn't just a project, it was a confession disguised as a story. He was protecting himself, rewriting what went wrong so the blame fell softer on him, and somehow, I had helped him do it. When the clock hit midnight, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would go see him. Not to argue. Not to shout. But to ask the question that had haunted me since that signature left my hand: why me? Why, after all these years, did he still need me to be part of his truth? Outside, the rain started again, slow and steady against the glass. I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring into the dark. I didn't know what I was walking into the next day, but I knew one thing for certain: this time, I wouldn't just sign. I would make him speak. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The air was still, heavy with that uneasy quiet that comes before a storm. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the faint glow of dawn creep through the blinds, and tried to convince myself I wasn't afraid. But I was. Not of Daniel himself, but of what I might learn if I faced him again. I dressed simply: jeans, a soft sweater, no makeup. I didn't want this to be about appearances. I wanted answers. On the drive to his office, I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd keep calm, how I'd refuse to let him talk circles around me. But as the miles passed, I found myself remembering little things: the way he used to bring coffee to my desk before meetings, the way he always said "we'll figure it out" when everything seemed to be falling apart. It made me angry, how nostalgia could make even betrayal feel complicated. When I arrived, the parking lot was nearly empty. The building looked different in daylight, colder, less inviting. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, before finally walking in. He was there, behind the same desk, just like before. Only this time, he didn't smile. "You came," he said quietly. "I told you I would." He gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing. "Daniel," I began, keeping my voice steady, "I saw your video. You twisted the story. You made it sound like I was complicit in what happened, like I knew." He leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You did know, in your way. You were there when decisions were made." "Don't do that," I said, sharper than I meant to. "Don't blur the lines. You know exactly what you're doing, taking fragments of truth and using them to justify yourself." He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "You think this was easy for me? To look back at everything, to see how it all ended?" I took a step closer. "Then why do it? Why drag me into it again?" He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something raw in his eyes: not arrogance, not calm, but exhaustion. "Because," he said, "the story isn't about blame. It's about what we lost. About what I lost." "What you lost?" I echoed, my pulse quickening. He hesitated, then stood. "You think I made that video for publicity, or for closure? But I made it because I couldn't stop thinking about you, about the choices we made together. The truth is, I don't know where I end and you begin in that story. You were the one who challenged me, who made me see things differently. Without you, it wouldn't mean anything." I stared at him, speechless for a moment. "You built a story that ruins my name, and now you want me to see it as some kind of tribute?" He shook his head. "No. I wanted to remind us, what it meant back then. I just didn't know another way." His voice cracked slightly, and I hated how part of me still cared. I turned toward the window. Outside, the sky had darkened, and thunder rolled faintly in the distance. "You could have called. You could have just asked me to talk. You wouldn't have answered," he said softly. He wasn't wrong. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything we hadn't said years ago. I thought about how trust isn't broken all at once, it frays, little by little, until one day it's just gone. Finally, I faced him again. You need to fix it, Daniel. Take it down, change it, whatever you have to do. You can't keep my name tied to your version of things. He didn't move. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, I said firmly. You made it simple when you put my face in your story. His expression hardened just slightly, not cruel, but defensive. If I take your part out, the story collapses. You were the heart of it. Then maybe it should collapse, I said. Because it was never honest to begin with. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at me, and I could see him fighting something inside himself. Regret, pride, fear, I couldn't tell which. Then he nodded slowly. All right, he said. I'll make changes. Not changes, I said quietly. The truth. He looked at me for a long time, then walked over to the desk and opened his laptop. I watched him pull up the video files, the editing software, the raw footage. My name appeared in one of the folders, and seeing it there just sitting between file numbers and dates made my stomach twist. Do you want to see something? He asked. Before I could answer, he played a clip. It was from one of our old team meetings, the last one before everything fell apart. In it, I was speaking, calm but passionate, saying something about accountability, about doing the right thing even when it costs you. Daniel paused the video and turned to me. That's why I wanted you in it. Because people need to hear that. You were right then, and you're right now. I didn't know what to say. For the first time, I saw what he'd meant when he said he couldn't separate his story from mine. It wasn't about blame. It was about unfinished truth, his way of making sense of the past that had defined us both. Still, it didn't excuse what he'd done. I want my own words back, I said finally. My own story. Not yours. He nodded slowly. Then tell it, he said. I'll help you. The rain started tapping harder against the windows, and the lights in the office flickered once. Somewhere deep down, I knew this conversation wasn't really about the video anymore. It was about everything that had gone unspoken between us for years, the guilt, the respect, the strange, unshakable bond we'd never fully understood. I left without shaking his hand. I didn't promise forgiveness, and he didn't ask for it. But when I stepped outside, the air felt lighter somehow. I knew this wasn't over. He'd said he'd help me tell my version, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to speak. Still, as I walked to my car, the storm broke open above me, and a single thought ran through my mind, clear as thunder. I should never have signed, but maybe, just maybe, it was the only way to finally rewrite the truth myself. He asked me to sign. I shouldn't have. A week passed before I heard from Daniel again. In that time, I tried to return to normal life, morning walks, grocery lists, the quiet rhythm of ordinary days, but it was impossible. Every time I opened my phone, I half expected to see another email, another edit, another apology. Nothing came. Just silence. Then, one evening, as the sun began to set, I got a message. It's ready. Your version. For a long while, I just stared at the screen. I didn't know if I wanted to see it. But curiosity, as always, won. I drove back to his office one last time, my hands tight around the steering wheel, the sky painted with the deep orange of early dusk. The building was quiet when I arrived. No music, no chatter, no storm this time, just stillness. He met me at the door, looking tired but peaceful. There was no pretense this time, no forced smile. Just two people carrying the same weight. It's finished? I asked. He nodded. You'll see. He led me into the small studio. The room smelled faintly of dust and coffee. His computer screen glowed softly in the dim light, a single file open, her story, final cut. He pressed play. The video began not with the company logo, not with his narration, but with mine. My voice. The same clip he had once taken out of context now opened the story exactly as I'd meant it, about honesty, accountability, and how silence can sometimes speak louder than words. Then came images, real, raw. The team laughing, working, struggling. But this time, there was no manipulation. He let the moments breathe. He let truth speak for itself. I watched myself younger, full of energy, full of faith in something I couldn't even name anymore. It hurt to see, but it also healed something I didn't realize was still broken. When the video ended, the screen faded to black. A single sentence appeared, dedicated to those who stood by the truth, even when it cost them. I didn't say anything for a while. I just sat there, my throat tight. Finally, I turned to him. You did this. He nodded slowly. We did this. You were right, I couldn't tell my story without you. But maybe it was never just my story to tell. His tone wasn't defensive anymore. It was humble, quiet. For the first time since this began, I felt the tension between us dissolve. Not erased, not forgotten, but understood. I stood up, walking closer to the screen. My reflection stared back at me, older, yes, but stronger too. I realized then that this whole ordeal wasn't about paperwork or a documentary. It was about reclaiming something I'd lost along the way, my voice. You should release it, I said finally. But only if the truth stays this way. It will, he promised. And your name will appear first. I smiled faintly. That's not what matters. Maybe not, he said. But it's what's right. We stood there for a moment, both of us silent. Outside, the last light of the day slipped away, leaving the room in a calm, grey-blue shadow. Before I left, he walked me to the door. You know, he said softly, I didn't just make this to clear my name. I made it because I wanted to make peace with the past, with you. I looked at him for a long moment. You didn't need a film for that, Daniel. You just needed to say it. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carries both regret and relief. Maybe. But I'm saying it now. I nodded. Then maybe we can finally let it rest. As I stepped outside, the air was cool and crisp. The sky above was deep violet, the first stars beginning to appear. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted by what had happened. I felt lighter driving home. I thought about the line I'd signed weeks ago, the line that had started it all. How something so small could open so many old wounds, and yet somehow lead to healing. That I realized that sometimes, the mistakes we regret the most are the ones that guide us back to who we were meant to be. That signature, that moment of blind trust, it had forced me to speak again, to remember, to reclaim my truth. I should never have signed. But if I hadn't, I might never have found the courage to rewrite the story, not his story, not the company's, but mine. And maybe that's what life is, after all, a series of signatures, some wise, some foolish, but all leading us back to the one thing that truly matters: honesty, even when it hurts us. So, if you're listening to this now, wherever you are, don't be afraid to face your past. Don't be afraid to reclaim your own story. Because sometimes, the hardest things to confront are the very things that set us free.